Welcome to this explainer. You know, the illegal drugs on your city's streets, the money laundering that quietly impacts the broader economy, it all stems from one incredibly complex and secretive landscape, the global criminal underworld. Today, we're pulling back the curtain to look at the staggering scale of international organized crime, and more importantly, how international authorities are actively teaming up to dismantle these shadowy networks. So, let's dive right in.
So, what does it actually take to bring down a global crime syndicate? I mean, we aren't talking about your average street-level gangs here. We're talking about massive, multinational criminal networks that operate with the logistics, the wealth, and the strategic planning of Fortune 500 shadow corporations. How do you stop an enterprise that literally doesn't respect borders, laws, or human life? Well, to figure out the solution, we first have to understand the sheer scale of the problem.
Let's start with part 1, the fall of McGovern.
To really wrap our heads around this massive story, let's look at a specific, recent event that absolutely sent shockwaves through the criminal underworld. 24 years. Just let that number sink in for a second. That is the massive prison sentence recently handed down by Ireland's Special Criminal Court to a man named Sean McGovern. In the context of organized crime, a quarter-century sentence isn't just a punishment. It is a profound disruption of a criminal network's human infrastructure.
McGovern actually admitted to involvement in murder and attempted murder offenses, but the absolutely crucial point here is this. McGovern wasn't just some low-level player or a random foot soldier. Authorities described him as a highly trusted, senior operative in a major organized crime syndicate. Taking down someone with his level of institutional knowledge, his contacts, and his operational authority, that marks a massive, significant victory for law enforcement.
Which brings us to Section 2. The Kinahan Crime Syndicate.
Zooming out from that individual conviction of Sean McGovern really reveals the sprawling enterprise he was working for, the notorious Kinahan Cartel, and they fit the exact textbook definition of a transnational crime network. This is not a localized operation by any stretch. This is a massive syndicate operating across multiple countries and multiple continents. They orchestrate large-scale illegal activities with a reach that stretches all the way across Europe into the Middle East and far beyond. They're a borderless entity, which historically has made them incredibly difficult for any single nation's police force to tackle. The Kinahan network has built a portfolio that is both highly lucrative and deeply, deeply violent. We're talking about international drug trafficking on an unbelievable scale. We're talking about money laundering to clean those astronomical profits, and, exactly as we saw with the McGovern conviction, contract killings. It's a multinational business built entirely on violence and illicit trade spanning several continents.
So how on earth do authorities fight back against something this huge? Well, it requires an expansive cross-border dragnet. You've got Ireland securing special criminal court convictions, Spain running joint investigative operations, and the United Arab Emirates actively targeting fugitive crime leaders who honestly thought they were untouchable out there. Plus, the Netherlands is playing a key role in cross-border syndicate disruption. This shows us that when nations actually share intelligence and pool their resources, the shield of a transnational network really begins to crack. In fact, investigators are actively pursuing other alleged crime leaders connected to this network right now.
Moving right along to Section 3, Busting the Cocaine Highway.
The crackdown on the Kinahan cartel is one massive piece of the puzzle, for sure, but international police operations are scoring huge wins elsewhere too. Let's consider the cocaine highway. This major Atlantic drug smuggling route has served for years as a critical global artery for illicit smuggling. Think of it as the logistical backbone for transnational organized crime networks to move their product from suppliers to the most lucrative markets. But recently, authorities severely disrupted it.
11 tons. Seriously, think about that. Over 11 tons of cocaine were seized in a recent international police operation targeting this very highway. The sheer astonishing volume of product these syndicates are moving is just staggering. I mean, the logistics required to move 11 tons of contraband across an ocean, the ships, the ports, the coordination is mind-boggling. Snatching that much product out of the supply chain is a massive financial blow to the underworld.
But here's the reality. Seizing the product is really only half the battle. What truly cripples a network's infrastructure is capturing the human capital. Suspects linked to these organized crime networks were actually arrested during this disruption. You can seize all the drugs in the world, but if the architects of those smuggling routes remain free, they're just going to buy more ships. Arresting the organizers is what actually fractures the cocaine highway for good.
And that leads us to our final section,
the digital recruitment threat.
Up until now, we've been talking about physical hitmen and physical drug shipments crossing literal oceans. But traditional logistics are now competing with a growing, invisible, and totally borderless threat: online radicalization and digital networks. It's a completely different kind of logistics, one that trades not in tangible goods, but in influence and violence.
Authorities in several Western countries are currently investigating some incredibly concerning allegations on this new frontier. Teenagers are being actively targeted and recruited online. And what exactly are they being recruited for? Violent, criminal, and terrorist-related activities. Even more alarming, these investigations point to these efforts being orchestrated by foreign-backed networks. So, we're looking at a scenario where international networks are bypassing physical borders entirely, reaching straight into communities via the internet to recruit youth for violent ends. It's wild.
Which brings us to the most provocative question we face today. As international dragnets successfully dismantle the traditional physical cartels, like we saw with the Kinahans and the cocaine highway, is the next major threat already bypassing our physical borders and recruiting teenagers online? The global underworld is constantly evolving. And as this explainer shows, understanding exactly how they operate, whether that's out on the high seas or right on our digital screens, is the absolute first step to bringing them down. Thanks so much for joining me on this deep dive. Keep learning, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.